What's some of the worst cases of helicopter parenting you've ever witnessed? I work at a university mailroom. And at the start of the semester, freshman students need to come to us to open up a mailbox. One father came in and tried to sign his daughter up for her mailbox. And we had to turn him away and tell him that his daughter had to be the one to open the mailbox herself. So he came back with his daughter later that day. And we gave her the sign-up sheet. Then we watched as he filled everything out for her. He had her permit in his wallet. She didn't know her own email address or her school ID number. But Daddy did. When we were going over the rules and regulations with her, she was staring off into space. And her dad pocketed the key to her mailbox as they left. About 4 weeks later, we saw that girl again. She was closing her mailbox because she was dropping out of college because it was a lot harder than she thought it would be. She didn't know her mailbox number. Still didn't know her school ID number. And didn't know her home address. She had to call her dad and ask him for all of that information. My brother told a girl he couldn't date her because my mommy said so. He was 18 years old. So many horror stories. Little League Baseball. I want to say first and second graders. Kid gets up to bat and the mother is standing about 6 feet away. The kid gets a hit and the mom begins to race with him from home to first, encouraging him to run the whole way. I had to ask someone in the crowd if the kid was developmentally challenged or something. Nope. Just a mom being way too overeager to see her kid succeed. Not me. But my friend, when she was maybe 13, went to the cinema with a friend to find the friend's mum sitting in the front row. And sat there the whole time, constantly turning around to check on them. Okay. So during a group chat last Halloween, me and some friends were talking about what horror movie to watch. Me and another friend of mine were debating over Ouija 2 and Alien when another buddy of mine chimed in out of the blue. Keep in mind this was at around midnight. So we asked for his opinion, yet he didn't know what we were talking about. He had absolutely no frame of reference for anything we mentioned and was constantly trying to change the topic. It turns out my friend's mother had taken his phone and pretended to be him to try to squeeze out any info on us. Which is just really creepy, and we somewhat ended up avoiding him a bit later. This mother also has a tracker in his phone and is generally a religious nut. When I was little, the mother of a kid in my 4th grade class volunteered at the school. She would literally sit in class with him all day, assist him with his assignments. He wasn't special needs, just a normal kid like the rest of us. At times someone tried to befriend him. His mother always chaperoned the introduction, since this was back in the 90s. Anything involving parents was seriously off-putting. I remember inviting him to kick ball. His mother didn't want him getting hurt. We felt bad for him. I always read these threads and think to myself, okay, I think I might be doing okay with my kids. My aunt picked out my cousin's clothes well into his teen years. He would wake up late for school and sit on his bed until she physically dressed him. When my kid was in preschool, a lady and her son came to check out the school one day. She was really cool. And her son played well with all the kids. He started full-time the next week. On his very first day, he went down the slide too fast and landed on his knees on the mulch. He wasn't hurt at all. Just got right back up to play. The next day, his mom came in to raise hell. She said someone should have held his hand as he went down the slide. And couldn't believe there wasn't an incident report filled out. Never came back. I'm not sure if this counts. But one time when I was in kindergarten, I hugged one of my friends as kids tend to do. As it turns out, his mom didn't like the fact that I hugged my friend. I am not sure if it had to do with the fact that we are both guys. Avoid any sort of confrontation from my friend's mom. My mom had to tell me that it's not okay to hug everyone. I have an aunt and uncle where whenever they fly somewhere for a family vacation, they fly with the family separated in half. Each half takes a different plane. So if one crashes, half the family will have survived. I told him the whole "you're more likely to die when you're all driving to the airport together" thing, but he's not interested. In his defense, he was actually in a commercial airplane that emergency landed in a farmer's field at one time. They came to her job interview. A girl in my old secondary school, aged 15, had a bracelet that would beep loudly whenever she wasn't in a location she was expected to be in. Once, due to a glitch in a maths lesson, the bracelet went insane, beeping and flashing. Long story short, she left the room. She rang her parents, and they called off the cavalry. This is my favorite story cause it makes me laugh every time my husband tells it, but his mom used to make him poop with the doors open. She is crazy and I don't have time to tell all of her antics. But anyways, so he was always just used to not being able to close the bathroom door. When he was like 8 years old, he was invited to a friend's house for the first time and had to poop. So naturally he went to the bathroom and started letting it blow with the door wide open for an audience, which attracted several members of the family to just stare at him until the kid's mother came shut the door. He could hear the family laughing. Then when he was done and came out of the bathroom, the kid's mother told him, "I don't know what happens at your house, but over here we shut the door when we're using the toilet." She also made him keep the door open when showering too, although I don't know when he realized that was also wrong. I was in college. I sat the 10:30-12 desk shift, and like clockwork every night this dude's mom would call and demand that we send Unra to her son's room and make him call her. My brother's friend had no idea about Hitler or the Holocaust until she was a senior in high school. Her parents forbade anyone to teach her about it because it was too upsetting. I was at college orientation and one parent came up to my friend and said, "That girl over there is my daughter. You go up to her and introduce yourself to her and be her friend." In a C++ class, a girl had to turn in a project that was due in the beginning of the class. One day she didn't bring her project at the beginning of the class but waited until our 30-minute break. Her assignment wouldn't print, so her father came in class during the 30-minute break and helped her print it out to turn it in. We had a class printer. Her dad would sit outside of every class in the waiting area for 5 hours. He would help her during the break between classes. My mum wanted to go through my Reddit inbox. Some friends of mine wouldn't let their kid take the school bus. He was in kindergarten, so I didn't think too much of it. For the first day of grade 1 they said he could take the bus, but they would drive to the school to make sure he got off the bus and into school okay. Kudos to the kid. He told them he didn't want them to do that and they backed off. She moved her daughter up a grade, which caused the poor little girl to be ostracized by the class of older kids for behaving immaturely. She found out a bunch of 8-year-olds and likely to respond well to a 7-year-old with a superiority complex. Mama made it worse by deciding she would force the kids to like her daughter. She threatened to sue the school for not addressing her daughter being bullied. The school didn't take the threat seriously because no, you can't sue somebody because nobody will play with your kid. As far as I know, the mom never sued, but she still whines. Even 2 years later. I work as a SAR in one of the labs at my school. I had to come in on the Saturday just after classes start, as in classes have been in session for 2 days, for something. Dude shows up and is pounding on the glass door. So, I go down and ask him what he wanted. Opening the door, as the building is closed, he is wanting to talk to someone about how his son is doing in his classes. I point out it's 3 p.m. on a Saturday and there are no professors in the building. I ask him if he has permission from his student, as he has to have written permission or proof of the kid being a dependent on the taxes. He says he's covered. So, I tell him to come back Monday with his paperwork, as he doesn't have anything on him, or no one will be able to talk to him legally. So, Monday comes around and I'm jetting out of classes. And I see dude walking out a lecture hall, followed by 2 of the campus police. Dude just decided he was going to sit in on his kids' classes. Prof told him to leave and he refused. Come to find out, dude was helicopter parenting a kid who was a step kid 5 years ago. Mom divorced dude partially for helicopter parenting and remarried. No permission. No tax dependent, legally gives permission. Not even legally related anymore. Helicopter parent got a restraining order slapped on him. I know a person whose dad is a helicopter pilot and flew her to prom. Kinda relevant. I was 19 years old and flying home from college over Christmas break. A boy I graduated high school with was coming home on the same day, and his mother went to great lengths to ensure that he and I were on the same flight and seated right next to each other, without my knowledge, because she didn't want her son flying alone. All one family, not mine. Mom has a wakened son for school every day because he oversleeps. Buy the kid an alarm clock. Oh. He doesn't need that. Wake him up. Son wants to go away to college. Can't imagine why. We're not paying all that money when you can't even get yourself up in the morning. Older sister graduates college a whole year early. Gets a job and applies to grad school. Mom, you don't need to go to grad school. You have student loans to pay. Mom does not grasp the concept of deferment. Sister applies to school. Mom is so distraught she moves out the house for months because it's going to go into foreclosure if sister gets a master's. Older son joined a fraternity. Mom and dad are upset because they did not discuss this as a family. They wanted to select his fraternity. Both were distraught when they were not invited to his induction. Son graduated and wanted to join police department. Mom, dad, and all adult siblings piled into the car to drive him to the physical. Can't imagine why he didn't get hired. One more. Alarm clock son mentioned before. Was denied the right to live on campus at the local college mom and dad selected for him because he has a bedwetting problem. Why do I even know this? Again. I can't imagine why. Work in retail. Mother and son, who was roughly in his early 20s, come in to get her son his first suit. Co-worker gets him fitted in a modern but lifetime classic suit. Mother begins to argue that it fits all wrong and implies it should fit something similar to a suit worn back in the 80s 90s, boxy and baggy beyond belief. Co-worker works to find a median between what she wants and what we suggest. While he does this, she goes around the room and tells all the other customers shopping trying on suits how their suits are wrong and what a proper fit should be. Could not have gotten her out fast enough. 3-year-old kid. Mum is totally convinced that if he is allowed to carry his backpack up the stairs to his classroom his spine will be deformed. That pack weighs about a pound because she won't let him carry his own books. I tried explaining to her that the way muscles get strong is through use and that not letting him use his muscles is much more likely to cause damage. No go. Didn't even bother getting into prior perceptive feedback and the way children use their bodies to regulate their emotions. Newsflash folks. Treating your able-bodied child like they're made of glass will damage them physically, psychologically and socially. Let your damn kid carry his own damn bag. My cousin is in college in the Upper Peninsula. My aunt tracks her every move through her cell phone, monitors her debit card, and calls her if anything weird shows up. I'm pretty disgusted by it. I don't know how much this counts, but a few years ago a college friend of mine had her first baby and called me to say she'd just delivered and I should come visit the hospital the next afternoon. Hooray. Big life event with a friend. I get there, and I see my friend and her baby for maybe 30 seconds before her mom, who was sitting looking pissed off in the corner, kicks me out of the room so my friend can nurse even though my friend is saying it's okay for me to be there. And when I say she kicked me out, I mean she literally pushed me out of the room and locked the door. I stood outside for 30 minutes before I just left. I tried knocking once but she cracked the door and snarled, "We're not ready. Lady. Seeing your daughter's tits is the least of my worries since she and I spent freshman year doing molly and having threesomes with her boyfriend. I think I know what her tits look like. It's not even her baby. Damn it." My dad was such a helicopter parent that he became a meme at my high school. He was a good guy, but always checking my Power Score, an online grading resource thing, and printing it out highlighting things he didn't like, and passive aggressively leaving the paper with his notes on my bed. Always reminded me of stuff I had coming up for the week even when I mentioned it beforehand. It got to the point that whenever someone got a bad grade, did something stupid, people would look at him and say melody fenestration in a drawn out Boston accent. I have another one. I was part of this youth group who wanted me to join the 4-H club. Mind you, the majority of the 4-H was homeschoolers and kids from youth group. I signed up and paid the fee with my own money. My mom found out and told me I couldn't join because she didn't want me around other kids. I have a student rental. The students rented it from May till May but weren't around much in the summer. One kid's father called me in September and said the house was dirty. It had some dust. From not being cleaned for 4 months, I guess. He asked who would be cleaning it and when. I told him his 19-year-old son was capable of using a broom and hung up. My mom once asked out a girl for me. Totally out of the blue. The girl and I were both weirded out by it. A parent at the high school I work at. She brings her junior son a hot lunch every day to school from one of the local trendy restaurants. One day her son's lunch went missing. Maybe it was stolen. Nobody knows. Regardless, kid could have gotten lunch from the cafeteria, which offers decent food, believe it or not. Of course. In her mind, some random kid in the 4,000 plus student body, secretly bullying her kid. She calls meeting with the principal but he's busy. She can't handle that. So she calls the vice superintendent of schools in the district. Also busy. Just let it go? Nope. She gets a meeting with the superintendent of schools. Her meeting was fruitless and pointless. When I was about 16-17, I was hanging out around a campfire in my friend's backyard with 3 of my friends. One of which was fresh out of an argument with his girlfriend. At some point in the evening, his girlfriend's mother arrives. Tells him that said girlfriend has been crying for hours and to fix things up. She's in the car right now, go make up. Saying no other options. Went in the car. The mother then proceeded to take his seat and waited with us until it was over. That is still 10 years later. Most awkward I have ever felt. Love our bull and his sons. How has nobody mentioned that yet? My friend really an old HS classmate, she's 20 and her parents don't let her have a job. They also hit her. I'm currently living with my aunt and rest of family, so I can't offer her a place to stay. They control everything for her. Holy, these are also up. There have been studies done that show kids of parents who never let them explore on their own and talk to other kids freely grow up to have way more mental disorders such as anxiety and even depression. These kids don't deserve this. I hate helicopter parenting. Reading through all of these has been incredibly therapeutic. I grew up in the 70s. I was a free-range kid. Saturdays I would bail early. Later mom. Going to the creek. Okay hon. Be back by dinner. And that was that. All day adventures and the creek might be involved or not. As long as I was home by 5 o'clock for dinner. Yes. I had a watch. Yes. It was analog. Yes. I knew how to read it. Everything was cool. Sometimes I might think that I didn't make the most of my time. That maybe I didn't have the coolest toys. That my parents were a little harsh with me. Then I read this thread and I realize that my childhood was the bomb. Thanks Reddit. A kid I went to school with had his mom walk him to his sat room. I know a kid who's 16 and he isn't allowed on the computer without supervision. Worst thing is, the school he and I go to is mainly on the computer. School provides Chromebooks. Most of our assignments are on Google Classroom. Etc. etc. His parents told the school he didn't need a computer and would use his own. But by that they meant any school work he had to do would be done in their living room on the family PC, which often didn't work, while his crazy mum sat behind him the whole time and complained about how long he took.